Manushyalaya Chandrika is basically, to anybody's viewpoint, it's a manual of construction of buildings. You ask anybody, they will say Manushyalaya Chandrika is a textbook of construction of buildings in a traditional way. But if you read through Manushyalaya Chandrika, you will find that the author was an extraordinarily brilliant person. Sapatya Veda is one of the four Upavedas. You would have heard about Ayurveda. You would have heard about Dhanurveda. You would have heard about Gandharva Veda, and lastly Sapatya Veda. They are all appendages of Vedas, four Vedas, directly relate with the Vedas. So, it is called Upaveda, but Upa does not mean secondary. In Sanskrit, Upa means specialized. So, whereas the main of Vedas deal with the theoretical aspects, philosophical aspects, all Upavedas are practical science and technology. But then came one individual in 1550, not exactly 1550, what is recorded is his date is, his life is, this time of writing is deducted by historians based on the one who came before him and who came on later. And he said that first half of 16th century, so approximately 1550. I said the period of Tirumangalatha Neelakandan Moosa is 1550. This book remained in the palm leaves for quite some time. But among the learned people it was learned. Then ultimately, one great, I should say, great figure, T. Ganapati Shastri, he was only a Sanskrit teacher. He was appointed in the manuscript library of then Travancore University, and there he verified so many manuscripts and brought out the first English edition, first Devanagari, Sanskrit edition in Devanagari script in 1917. What are the contents of Manushyalaya Chandrika? You will find that there are only 7 chapters in Manushyalaya Chandrika, and 7 chapters, each one of them is given as Bhuparisha, investigation of land, Vastu Vinyasa Vidhi, analysis of site, Mana Bheda Yoni Nirnayam, dimensional system, Shala Vithanam, layout and planning of salas, Grahavayava Vithanam, different elements of the building, and lastly, Kavada, many secondary elements of the building connected with that one. I welcome all, I won't call delegates, all who have come to share our experience. My only request is that if you have any questions to ask, please write it down, because I'm not able to, the problem. Right ear has left working long back, and left ear is also only partially left. So you note down the questions and then give me, I will be able to try, I will try to answer. I started teaching in 1965. So it's quite some time. Even though I retired in 2002, I did not leave teaching because I continued teaching in many related subjects. I have taught subjects like Vastuvidya as a continuation of the subject which I was teaching here. Then Vastuvidya is also related to astrology. So I learned astrology and I also taught astrology to a group of people, to a group of experts. And I presented some aspects in the modern light of astronomy, like the changing position and so many other things. I also taught subjects like building technology to people from tribal areas, like that. Actually, we have a trust which tries to interconnect the learners and the teachers. You ask me for any subject, we try to locate the experts and give an arena for learning that subject. We have an extensive land where my daughter is trying her agricultural experiments, like that. None of them are by my merit, say God-given directions, I will say. Today, I am presenting about Manushyalaya Chandrika. Manushyalaya Chandrika is basically, to anybody's viewpoint, it's a manual of construction of buildings. You ask anybody, they will say Manushyalaya Chandrika is a textbook of construction of buildings in a traditional way. If you read through Manushyalaya Chandrika, you will find that the author was an extraordinarily brilliant person. My attempt was to explore into his mind rather than the book. In order to do that one, first myself and my teacher, Dr. Achudan, we wrote an engineering commentary on Manushyalaya Chandrika. This is a very exhaustive book. It transliterates Sanskrit stanzas, gives translation and gives commentary. And in all commentary, we incorporate illustrations. There are more than 100 illustrations. Presently, it is out of print. It has just gone to the press for a new edition. This edition is a concise form of Manushyalaya Chandrika, but it does not include the commentary and such other things related with this one. This is just to introduce what is this book. And we will see why Manushyalaya Chandrika. My aim is to find out the roots of Manushyalaya Chandrika on one hand, and the futuristic vision about Manushyalaya Chandrika's ideas on the other. Not equally, some portions will rush. Basically, it is dealing with Manushyalaya, house of man. Why house of man? Because there are also house of others. Devalaya, for example, is the house of God. There are many other aspects. For example, the whole knowledge regarding this creation of artifacts has its root in Sthapatya Veda. And Sthapatya Veda is one of the 4 Upavedas. You would have heard about Ayurveda. You would have heard about Dhanurveda. You would have heard about Gandharva Veda, and lastly Sthapatya Veda. They are all appendages of Vedas, 4 Vedas, directly relate with the Vedas. So, it is called Upaveda, but Upa does not mean secondary. In Sanskrit, Upa means specialized. So, whereas the main of Vedas deal with the theoretical aspects, philosophical aspects, all Upavedas are practical science and technology. That's a particular. And in Stapatya Veda, different aspects are covered. Of course, the next speaker, she is going to talk about Samarangana Sutradhara. In Samarangana Sutradhara, there is chapter 45, which talks about Stapati, and 46 dealing with Stapatya, and in which it says that Stapatya Veda has 8 parts. So it is actually called Ashtanga Stapatya Veda. She will talk about it later. So it's a very vast science. But everything starts from the basic requirement of house. Next one. Yes. Basically, man started building thousands of years ago. This building is taken from Wayanad. It's a folk house by the tribal people. Out of the many tribal peoples, one group has shifted over to doing agricultural operations. They are called Paniyar. Paniyar is only one small group. This Paniyar come and settle in the villages. They consider, so this is a comparatively very sophisticated house. But you see, the main elements of the house are already incorporated here. There is a raised ground, and that forms the plinth. Then there are walls, but you see the walls are constructed by bamboo poles and wattle screen, which are covered by mud. It is tied at the top, and a roof structure is made, and it is thatched by grass. What is this grass? What is this grass? This grass is darbha grass. In local language, they call it thirpa. Why darbha grass? Darbha grass can sustain decay for 3 years. Ordinary grass will decay in 1 year, whereas darbha will resist climatic variation for 3 years. Next one. What were the pre-Vedic ages? In the pre-Vedic ages of the house forms, we have no examples, but we have relics of depiction of these villages, Vedic villages, in the Sanchi and Amaravati Buddhist monuments. And these monuments are about 1,000 years old. So whenever they got a hard material to depict, their memories, they're transferred in the form of depiction, and there you will find the broad shapes of the huts and even villages represented to some extent after about 4,000 years. We are talking about 5,000 years for the Vedic age, and this is about 1000 BC. 1000 BC means only 3,000 years before that. So from that stage, we came through different stages. Next one. Out of temporary constructions, the most important things were Vedic sheds, Yagashalas. Of course, I have not covered Vedashalas here, because Vedashala is one of the angas of Stapatya. Because Vedashalas, Vedic Yajnashalas, are all temporary structures. They construct the temple, they construct the Yagashalas, carry out Vedic rituals, and at the end of the rituals, they set it to fire, so that there is no remains, nothing remains. But then they did many important contributions. One is evolution of the dimensional system. And this dimensional system is based on the reach of the Yajamana. And this reach of the Yajamana was called Purushadanda, human scale. And of the reach is called Purushadanda, but there is another danda which is based on Keshanda danda. Keshanda danda means up to the end of the hair. That is the forehead, up to the forehead. That is Keshanda danda. And these two were taken as measures. If you ask what is the spacing of the columns in the Vedic Sala, they will say it is Purusha Danda. Everything is based on that standard Danda. And with that, they constructed rectangular shapes, trapezoidal shape, and so many other shapes. How? They created geometrical relationship between the sides, and that is the contribution of great scientists like Bauthayana, Katyayana, Manava, and Apastamba. So you see, during the time about 800 BC, already they knew the mathematics. There are people who still do it in Kerala. To know what they are doing, I sat at the feet of one of the Vaidikas. And after about five days repeatedly asking him, he came out. He said that it is made in a very, very simple way. He made me to sit on the chair. He sat on the floor and spread a sheet in which he shows that we take darpa grass, make a rope out of it, and on the rope you mark nodes at different intervals, and then put the rope along one peg, stretch it, you stretch it in the proportion 3, 4, 5, you get one post. You understand? They do the same thing here. Then 3, 4, 5 is not the only mathematical relation which will create right angle. He says some other dimension, some other dimension, some other dimension. And from this simple act, they created the shed. In no time, without any instrument, without any compass, without any chain, without any instrument. And I thank him because that gave me an insight into the way the Yajna-shalas. Now, Professor Stoll has written a book, Agni, regarding the first Adhiratram, which was conducted in 1975. Of course, they made the Shala, then only they did not explain how it was done. This explanation came later from another contribution who wrote a detailed book on Yajna-shalas, who documented the Yajna-shala both in the Vedic system as well as in modern system, and then converted into millimeter. So we have got a scale, how we are related. Next one. The modern system used in Vastuvidya is based on the human scale. You can see the difference. One is based on the raised hand, which is called the Purushadanda. Here, the diamond system is based on your span. How do you classify a bird? Well, how do you decide the dimension of a bird? By the wingspan. Similarly, the span is stretching out here. And one span is equal to 4 forearms. This forearm is called a measure called Aratni. And this forearm plus up to this is the hasta, full arm. That's a scale used in modern Vastuvidya. Of course, it is divided into different measures. It is divided into 3 padam. Each padam is divided into 8 angula. What is angula? A question asked to Sri Kumara. In the 16th century, Sri Kumara says that angula is the middle phalanx of the middle finger of the right hand of a standard person. See how definitely middle phalanx, because this finger has got three joints. Middle phalanx of the middle finger of a standard man. But what is a standard man? Varahamihira says there are 5 different types of ethnic traces. And from there you have to find. So you try to measure it in terms of something which does not vary, and that is the yava, grain size. Grain size does not have such variation. Particularly the yava, which is used for the worship. Navadhanyangal. In the Navadhanya, there is a yava, which is a standard barley. And that comes to about 3.75 millimeter. And in terms of that one, this is 8 times. So 8 times angula, 8 times angula, 3 times 8 angula forms 1 padam, 3 padam forms the hand, and 1 human span forms the 8. Everything is connected with the octave system. Next one. Yes, different scales are there. Out of the different scales, what would you adopt? So in India, generally, the smallest scale or standardized scale is what is adopted, and we have measured it as 72 centimeters. Then there is another scale which probably is also used, what is indicated there, of 81 centimeters. You go to Tamil Nadu, most of the measurements are 81 centimeters of Basta. And lastly comes the Vaibhulya. Vaibhulya is the largest one. And Vaibhulya has got 90 centimeters. 90 centimeters. That's the British, because 1 hasta, 3 padas, and 1 pada is 1 foot length. 3 foot makes a yard. So yardstick. Hasta measure is yardstick of the British people. But then, how does it perpetuate? In different regions, different scales are used. So there came a system in which the scale came to be marked on important monuments. Next one shows that the scale is marked on the plinth of the mandapam of the temple. This temple is at Pannayur. Pannayur Varahaswamy temple, mandapam, it is marked. A carpenter told me that, sir, it is marked on important temples at some place, not necessarily. And in Pannayur you can go and record it. And Pannayur temple was Pannayur temple and Sugapuram temple. They were the 2 important temples representing 2 schools of thought of the Vedic Brahmins long back. Not Vedic Brahmins, Agamic Brahmins. And having known, I sent my students for a project work to record it. And James was the tallest among us, amongst the students, he recorded it. This was done as part of the project work of the Civil Engineering Department of NIT Calicut. They brought out, that reference is given, it is from a project work done in the Civil Engineering Department. Now let us come back to Manushyalaya Chandrika. Next one. So the knowledge got accumulated over years, over centuries. But then, most of the books written on Vastuvidya or Stapatya Veda were classic books, classic treatises. Classic treatises like Manasara, Mayamada and other things. They dealt mostly with the temples and the palaces, not with residential houses. It was only a small addition. But then came one individual in 1550. Not exactly 1550. What is recorded is his date is, his life is, this time of writing is deducted by historians based on the one who came before him and who came on later. And he said that first half of 16th century, so approximately 1550. I said the period of Tirumangalatha Nilakandan Musar is 1550. This book remained in the palm leaves for quite some time. But among the learned people it was learned. Then ultimately, one great, I should say, great figure, T. Ganapati Shastri, he was only a Sanskrit teacher. He was appointed in the manuscript library of then Travancore University, and there he verified so many manuscripts and brought out the first English edition, first Devanagari, Sanskrit edition in Devanagari script in 1917. Based on that text, we wrote the engineering commentary. Why? Because there are many Malayalam editions which came in Malayalam script, but then the clarity of Sanskrit does not, no language has got that clarity. The pronunciation things. So we took the original book of Ganapati Shastri. I said Ganapati Shastri is great because he not only brought out the first edition of this one, he brought out many books. After retired, he went to Baroda. He brought out the issues of many things. Then he went to England. There he was bestowed sirship, but he never used the word sir. He always said, I am Ganapati Shastri. Like that. Great man. And it was published in Manushyalaya Chandrika, Trivandrum series, Government Press Trivandrum in Sanskrit. And then in 1998, we wrote the engineering commentary. In fact, my name is put here, but then it entirely Dr. Achyutan's contribution. Because Dr. Achyutan had a Sanskrit education right up to +2, intermediate. He comes from a family where Sanskrit was well known. He comes from Avittattur. And he was luckily our teacher, my teacher for final year engineering, and later on my colleague in REC Calicut, and later on we worked together on most of the books on Vastuvidya in Vastuvidya Pradhishthanam. He was the founder member. He was the first managing, chief executive officer of this thing. Dr. Achyutan, great man. Probably only another great man whom I have seen is my guide in IIT Kharagpur. So this is a great work. But then my work is essentially putting the drawings in the present form that is used in Manushyalaya Chandrika. Next one. What are the contents of Manushyalaya Chandrika? You will find that there are only 7 chapters in Manushyalaya Chandrika. And 7 chapters, each one of them is given as Bhuparisha, investigation of land, Vastu Vinyasa Vidhi, analysis of site, Mana Bheda Yoni Nirnayam, dimensional system, Shala Vithanam, layout and planning of salas, Grahavayava Vithanam, different elements of the building, and lastly, Kavada, many secondary elements of the building connected with that one, ancillary structures in the building. And the order in which the whole thing is presented is like a textbook, a modern textbook. In fact, no classical book covers it like that. They put the subject here and there. Classical example is Samarangana Sutradhara. You will find the subjects are so disorganized. It's a lexicon, but a disorganized lexicon. And this nature is not there for this. So he was written. He has told that this book is meant for people who are not initiated in the art of Vastuvidya. And for this, I have referred 19 books. And here's list of the 19 books. no earlier Sanskrit treatise lists the references. So this is the first book which lists the references for that work. In fact, there are many other unique features, and these unique features are given in the next slide. You will see. Yeah. Exclusive treatment. It does not give anything other than house construction. Manushyalaya only. There is a systematic treatment of the subject. Most important, it gives a elaborate treatment on the environmental setting, which is probably the emphasis of this particular workshop. Manushyalaya Chandrika gives great emphasis to environmental factors in the selection of site, layout of building, and planting of trees. The quality of the land is decided in terms of the terrain, hydrological features, and biotic factors. Sthala, Jala, Vriksha Guna. Sthala, Jala, Vriksha Gunaha. The desirable biotic, terrain, and hydrological and climatic factors are enumerated in stanzas 17 to 13 in chapter 1. Selection of land is based on climatic considerations and topography, and also by the purity, direction of flow, and the availability of water, the fertility of the topsoil, bearing capacity and permeability of the subsoil, medicinal values and abundance of flowering, fruit-bearing trees, and richness of the cattle life. Detailed description, planting different types of herbs and trees based on their use and strength are also given. The text also contains a list of trees to be avoided near a building site. Of course it goes, because about 13, 14 slokas in Sanskrit means plenty to make a book to write about. Then one another feature is, how will you design any building? Assume this is the building. Which is more important? The width is important, or the length is important, or the perimeter is important, or the area is important, or the height is important, or the volume of this room is important. There are many variables. What is the important thing for this room? Width or length? You mean? Very simple, width. No, I am asking one. Identify one, width or length, or height, or area, or perimeter, or volume. Huh? Well, of course, perimeter is identified in this book, but perimeter without giving the proportion of length and width is not relevant. There are so many aspects, but the identification of perimeter, of course, here again, this is not the venue for discussing about perimeter, but then you will find that perimeter becomes important as you come later. Then, centerline method. All the books deal only with the external sides. The form is identified, and the form has got external width, external length. If it's a room, internal width, internal height. But here there is a system called Madhya Prarudham, centerline method specified, exceptionally well. Remember our old hut, the first shown. A bamboo is put at the four corners. There is no space for deciding whether it is outside or inside. Now you construct a house. The partition wall may come inside or outside. There may not be wall at all. It may be just a glass wall. So the width or length, internal dimension and external dimension has no relevance in modern structures. Modern frame structures are based on centerline method. So this centerline method was identified about 500 years ago as one of the major things. And it is Prarudha, Madhya Prarudham. Madhyam means center. Prarudham, Prakarshena Arudham. Prakarshena is especially important. And he says that Of all the dimensions, that's the most important. I had this great difficulty in identifying it. Well, at one time, I had to go in search of somebody who will give me a final thing. A village carpenter from my village in Pichur district, he said that I have not used it, but I have heard my grandfather telling that for mandabas, centerline method is used. And from that, I started working backwards for the design of Trishala. Trishala has no other solution other than applying centerline method. Then ground coverage rules. Today you are talking about ground coverage of buildings, and these ground coverage rules are also given. Of course, the sequence of the second point, systematic treatment of the subject. The systematic treatment is given in the next para, like a flowchart. You can see later. Then the design process is given, and design process we are coming very important thing. In the design process, there are 6 steps. Yes. Marking the Vastu Mandala, width of VT. VT I have not told, but then a new term, VT, is introduced by the author. Grid analysis or Padavinyasa. Then planning of Graha Vedika. Graha Vedika is the footprint of the building, what you call today as the ground coverage. Then shifting. For example, we have not put anything under directly in the center of this room. We could have put there. No. When a theatre is designed, there is a stage, there is a place of audience. The center is free. There only a lamp is lit. In all operations, center is left out. For example, when I am looking at the madam, she looks at me, I look at her. No, we are looking at a midpoint. The reference to a central point, reference point. This particular aspect is an important thing. So we should avoid direct vedham, infliction with the midpoint or with the center line. So a shift given is called gamanam, importance of the gamanam. Then generating different stylistic typologies of building. How do you mark the mandala? Next one shows that you identify any center. Suppose you have got a huge compound, you approximately identify the center. And there you identify the directions, cardinal direction. How to identify cardinal direction? There is a method given there in Manushyalaya Chandrika. And having decided the 2 reference axes, you mark the mandala, the area which is required for you, divide it into 4 parts. Then you identify certain reference lines, the Nagavithi, Shulavithi, Karnasutram, etc., etc. There is a reference with which the design starts. These are called the reference line. Well, here the author takes a deviation. He says that start from the center and identify 9 VTs. 9 VT system. There is no reference of 9 VT system in any of the earlier treatises. People talk about 4 VTs. Many books talk about 4 VTs. I'll come to that later. Temple design goes for Sapta VT, Sapta Pragara. They don't call it VT, Sapta Pragara. Either Pancha Pragara or Sapta Pragara. But 9 VT system nobody has used. So there is a contribution. Probably there the author has meant something. Author has not simply, it's not, you would have adopted 4 VT system or 5 VT system or even 7 VT system. But what is this 9 VT system? So here the VTs are identified as given there 1 to 9, and the names of these are given in the paper. And the central 4 VTs are identified as In the Nayan system, they are identified as Brahma Vidhi, Ganesha Vidhi, Jala Vidhi, Agni Vidhi and Jala Vidhi. But here they are given a different name, Brahma Vidhi, Deva Vidhi, Manushya Vidhi and Pishacha Vidhi. 4 Vidhi system. And that is meant for the main structure. In Nayan Vidhi system, it is told that these 4 Vidhis, Vidhi number 1, 2, 3 and 4 is for main structure. Then there are 2 Vidhis which shall not be built. Then there are 2 Vidhis for secondary structures. What are the secondary structures we will see? Secondary structures are a cattle shed, for example, or a farmstead, or a grain storage, Khadasadma, Khalam, understand? Khalam. And any secondary, a worker stays there, so his worker's dwelling. All those things can come in the secondary structure. But here the emphasis is only on the main structures which are identified in the 4 Vidhis. And in the 4 Vidhis, the Brahma Vidhi, a path which goes around the center, that shall never be built. That is permanently open area. Next is Deva Vidhi, sacred. Another is Manushya Vidhi, for human use. These 2 together forms the Graha Vedika. Then outer one, Pishacha Vidhi, nothing to do with the demon. Pishacha means one which is an inert, and that is for Bahyangana. So the simple geometry of a house consists of a central courtyard, a Graha Vedika, and an outer courtyard. A Madhyangana, Graha Vedika, and Bahyangana. These are the 3 things. How this will be identified is given in the next one. Yeah. Now here comes a very interesting feature. There is an 8x8 division, but you see what happens. The central Anganam and the width of the Shala. Width of the Shala means the portion which is coming against that. Only that. Okay. It has got the same width. And in fact, the width to depth becomes more. It is not parallel to the Anganam, it goes perpendicular to the Anganam. Of course, you can construct a house. You should construct a house. There are situations where it is required. But then there is a discussion taking place. There, one book, Rajavallavam, says that no, the Anganam should have a proportion of 3 by 3 because the Graha Vedika is having a proportion 2 by 2. So he says that ideally a 3 by 3 division of the central yard is what is desirable. Now you see what happens in the next one. Look at here. Now here you see that once in the center there is a 3 by 3 division, M. M is Madhyangana. Now 5 for example, area mark 5 for example, is having a width of 2 pada and a length of 3 pada. Do you see? That means the ratio of width to length is 1.5. If you take 10 into 10 division, this ratio is width is 1 and length is 4. Garga says, another great man says, that ideally a building should have, a house should have a ratio of width to length not exceeding 1.5. Another saying, Daksha says, no, it should not exceed only 1 is or 1 by 1 is to 2. There are two schools of thought. We have not studied about the details. It's a problem open for study. That means what is magical about the ratio 1 to 1.5 or 1 is to 2? In a Malayalam book which you prepared much earlier than this Manushyalaya Chandrika, we made an analysis and we found that the efficiency of space, once it is divided into rooms, decreases. And once it goes more than 2, it decreases rapidly. Well, it's only our poor engineering interpretation. There could be more meaningful interpretations. But then they are all left open for discussion later. And then let us go to ground coverage. In the ground coverage, what happens is, let us take 8 by 8 division. In an 8 by 8 division, look at the 8 by 8 division, 8 by 8 grid. Whatever is marked covers 32 cells out of a total of 64 cells. Right? That means what is the ground coverage? 50%. And what is the ground coverage recommended today in National Building Board or KBR for most of the buildings? 50%. Right? Can you go beyond that? 7 by 7, it will be less. 9 by 9, it is still less. It goes on, and the table, next diagram, the ground coverage in Padavinyasa. There it shows, starting from 7 by 7, our reference point is 8 by 8. Against 8 by 8, you can see the total cell is 64. Cells in the Graha Vedika is 32, and the ground coverage is 50%. Reduce 7 by 7. In 7 by 7, it becomes 49. You increase 9 by 9, it is 49. You go on increasing, it gets lesser and lesser. And then once you take 18 by 18, it practically becomes 1/3, 34%. You continue, when you take 27 by 27%, 27 division, it becomes 25. Suppose you continue more than 32 by 32, maybe it will get 20. What is the significance of this? As the ground coverage is decreased, if the FAR is kept 1, you can go and build higher. So even with 9 by 9 division, you can build 2 stories. If you want to build 3 stories, what should be the grid division? Grid division should be 18 by 18. If you want to construct a 3-story building, 18 by 18. If you want to construct a 4-story building, 27 by 27. How many stories Havelis have? 3, generally 3. That means they would have adopted a grid division of 18 by 18 or slightly more than that, 19 by 19. Havelis have, nobody has studied the proportion of the yard and the built-up area. What I am trying to tell you is that by limiting the grid division to 32, they said that don't go more than 4 stories. Exactly the same provision as given in most of the building bylaws. I'm not saying that we were trying to match. Here they were trying to show a rationale for taking the building to greater heights. Okay, let us come back to our main contention. This is one of the observations which I made. So we trace the scope and we have come down to the origin, and some of the theories we are matching with the present. Now let us look forward. Already you have shown that the 9VT system was evolved, in which one portion was for main structures and then another one for the ancillary structures. There is the first one shown by the 7 division. This is repeated here in this slide on the southwest corner. Actually, we have showed the diagram in which the 9VT system spreads over the whole area. But then they say, no, don't use the entire space. Take only one quadrant, only two quadrants. Either you take northeast quadrant or southwest quadrant. Northeast quadrant is called Ishana Khanda and southwest is called Nirudi Khanda. Only two you can occupy for residences. Residences and ancillary constructions, you can adopt only that. What about the northwest Khanda? No, it's not for dwelling. It's for whom? That means you are effectively utilizing only 25% or at the maximum 50%. 50% you are not occupying because this is the space for something like a Chadushala construction. Okay. Chadushala construction. Right? So don't occupy that. Now look at this diagram in which entire development, if it comes, it is as shown in the southwest corner, Nirudi Khanda. Normally, a building will be only on the northeast Khanda. If you take the area restricted for residence is only shown to the 4 VTs shown there. Nothing should be built on another 1/3 and nothing should be built on the southern side. What should be the size of the VTs? This takes you to the investigation. This VT, the width of the VT, 9 VT system, out of the 9 VT system, 4 VTs we have come. These 4 VTs, if you take the danda, 2 hastas only, 2 hastas as the width of the VT, then you will come to a plot size of 4 VTs into 4 plus 4, 8 VTs, 8 into 2, 16 hastam. 16 hasta by 16 hasta will be the width of your plot. Suppose you take one danda, 4 hasta as your measure, then you will come to 32 hasta by 32 hasta. 16 hasta by 16 hasta is the minimal plot, and 32 hasta by 32 hasta will be the maximum site for the commoners. For the commoners, not for the kings, but for a common man, for the common people, your plot size should be restricted to 16 hasta by 16 hasta or maximum 32 hasta by 32 hasta. Go back to Varahamihira's Brihat Samhita. There is a chapter on Vastu Vidya. It says that for Brahmanas, it should not exceed more than 32 by 32 hasta. For Kshatriyas, 28 hasta by 28 hasta. For Vaishyas, 24 hasta to 24 hasta. For Shudras, 16 hasta by 16 hasta. No, beyond that there is no limitation. Of course, there is a category who do not belong, Panchamas. Even Panchama, 16 hasta by 16 hasta. That means the absolute minimum site of the building for a commoner should be 16 hasta by 16 hasta. And the 16 hasta by 16 hasta with a little elongation will be 5 cents of land. 5 cents of land. 5 cents of land is almost nearer to 1 ground of land in Tamil Nadu. Probably 1 chatak in Maharashtra. You will find that's a minimum size. You understand? Maximum size could be maximum 4 times that. So you cannot afford, you should not adopt maximum size. You should not adopt it. Government should not control. You should say that a common house, a commoner's house should not be more than 32 houses by 32 houses. Because such rules were there to control the land that is possible. 5 cents and the maximum should be 4 times that, 20 cents. And even if it is 5 cents, you can build a Chadushala building there. In 5 cents of land, you can build. There is a companion volume for the textbook called Design in Vastuvidya. In Design of Vastuvidya, there is a design by one of the architects, Nilina. Nilina had prepared a Chadushala in a 4 cents land, which we have included in that book as a typical, she did it for a typical project. Now, what will you do with the other two? Yes, possibly it was left out as a pasture land. See the next. It was put as a pasture land. It's a pasture land, and this pasture land for us, for the cattle, and for all things connected with that one. Because now let us again look at the size of the VT. Manushyalaya Chandrika says, we started from Manushyalaya Chandrika. Manushyalaya Chandrika says, the width of the VT could be as much as 10 danda. 10 danda means 1 danda is 4 hasta. So 10 danda will become how much? Much larger. And the whole area will be about 6.625. I have written, I have worked out. It comes about, if you take an example of a VT as 10 danda, the extent of the Vastu Mandala with a 9 VT system will be 18 times 10 danda, or 180 danda by 180 danda, or 720 hasta by 720 hasta, and this will have an extent of 25 hectares. 25 hectares means practically 62 acres. It will cover not a house, but a village. So in such a typical rural setting that is allowed, there is a scope for a pasture land to be left. And whether you are an occupant of the northeastern quadrant or southwestern quadrant, this becomes a common area where it can be converted into pasture land. And lastly, the southeast corner could be for industries. What industries in village? A village exists because of many industries. A potter, a clay maker, a clay. That becomes an area where input of energy is there. And most interestingly, these 4 quadrants represents the regions of 4 of the Pancha Mahabhutas. The northeast represents water. The southwest represents Bhumi. Southeast represents Agni. And northwest represents Vayu. And Akash is spread over everywhere. So basically it's a concept which is an adaptation of the concept of the Panchabhutas of the much early times, division of land into 4 quadrants, occupying houses in only 2 quadrants, that also in 2 stages. First you occupy one, then only you occupy the other. Leaving one entire quadrant as pasture land and another fund for the development of industries, from which I feel that Manushyalaya Chandrika is to be studied in different perspectives. There are many other things which I have not left in the epilogue of the paper, which you will eventually get, is it not? Eventually get, I have told that Manushyalaya Chandrika, viewed superficially, is a manual of residential planning and construction. but inquired critically, it presents many interesting theories worthy of academic investigation. Only one or two aspects of this work have been covered in this paper. A few other aspects for working on inquiry could be a theory on the design development of Chatushala. How exactly a Chatushala is developed? That has not been dealt here. Even though there are clues, or a theory of the aspect ratio. Aspect ratio is the relation between the width and length. That is called the aspect ratio. What is the significance of the aspect ratio? And combination of shalas. It is possible that casual observations and suggestions contained in Sanskrit technical theses of ancient India and monuments built by the craftsmen contain seeds of knowledge worthy of deep research studies in architectural sciences. I am concluding. I also given the entire references which I have referred in the paper.